Hello today. Shalom, salam, welcome. Today I'd like to talk about treating your creative work as paid work, whether it is or not. The reason I'm doing that is I think it's a big area where a lot of artists, new artists, fail to understand the importance of that because they might see in their mind, okay, my craft, my artwork is super important. I want to put everything into it, have all these amazing big dreams about it. I want to be X. I want to be right up here or do this, whatever it is. But then you see how the world treats artists, at least financially. It can also be demoralizing about maybe getting your art off the ground, getting your art recognized as decent, even if it is. I mean, it's so much about marketing and image and aesthetics and money and all that kind of different stuff. So then you think, how can you financially, temporally, and emotionally and psychology afford to put all your time in to the same effort that you would for paid work? So this is what this discussion is about. But you need to, as a creative artist, you need to put as much, if not more effort into your own creative projects than you would for any project that you're getting paid any amount of money. Because money can't be your defining factor, because money is not part of the creative process itself. It is tangential to it, it is a necessary element to it, but it is not creative to always be thinking about money. You have to be able to let go of the concept of money to get truly into the flow state. Otherwise, it's going to create a level of anxiety. That's why in music and film and other creative mediums, there's usually a producer and director role. There's usually, or at least, even if someone will be a producer and a director in musical film or whatever project it is, they'll change those hats at different times and won't keep on doing the same thing at different times to be able to think of those different things. So yes, money is important, time is important, but it's important to be creatively immersed in your creative process. And I've spent the last 15 plus years of my life as a creative professional and made about 95% of my money through my creative profession, primarily as a videographer, but also as a photographer and some kind of money as a life model. So I understand the importance of this because I can tell you before I got into making videos, I was making a lot of videos, short films, even just event videos, whatever kind of videos, little funny documentary I made in school, a few documentaries I made in school actually. But I made all these videos. Obviously, I didn't get paid for it, but I treated it seriously because I loved it. I actually won an award I had won in school was at Hoyt Cinema. So that was like a mind blowing ego trip for me. My sisters were like, "Don't you be too egotistic now that you won that award at the cinema." It's like, okay, yes, I will, but I'll try not to showcase it so much. Yeah, but life's one big ego battle anyway, right? I got into videos, started making them professionally, but I was doing a lot of business videos. Then when I got into photography, I did dozens of photo shoots and took tens of thousands of photos without getting paid for it just to get that skill. But I treated the shoot seriously. And like I treat the model seriously, I treat the process seriously. I wouldn't do anything that I wouldn't do on a paid shoot, and to treat it with the same level of seriousness. So show up on time, treat the people with respect, all that stuff because it's practice. And then when I got into music videos, the same thing. I did dozens of music videos for no cost, sometimes maybe just cost covered. So getting all that practice and the mentality right and building the portfolio as well. These are all great reasons. Practice, mentality, portfolio. But let me dive into 3 different aspects of treating your creative process and creative work professionally. Again, let's dive into the whole mentality aspect. You need to realize how important your art is, because if you don't realize that, who else is going to realize it? I'm sorry to say, but you're number one when it comes to your creative process. Nobody else is going to really put you ahead, so you have to be treating it at the top level. No one's going to value it more than you. You can only expect that everyone's going to value it less than you, even considerably less, even far less. So you have to value what you do greatly, even at least kind of overvalue it at the start, right? There's a whole thing like walk before you talk and act the part. These kind of ideas of just doing it, faking it till you make it, this kind of thing. I'm not saying you should be fake at all, but I'm just saying you should give yourself the mentality, have the image in mind of who you want to be, and be that person before you're that person. Because if you're not mentally, conceptually, behaviorally that person before you are, then how are you going to get there? See, it takes practice to become that kind of person, right? Mentality is a massive aspect. Mentality is what humans are. We are the mentality of ourselves. We are who we believe ourselves to be. Only we know who we are, and only we can become who we are. And we know who we are by both thinking about who we are and then doing who we believe we are and getting that feedback response with ourselves and other people. But better to practice with yourself, and then you'll find out with other people. And you need that practice. Practice makes perfect. So you just keep on practicing. Whatever creative pursuit it is, you need the practice to build the mentality. So just keep on doing it and schedule out a time where you do it, and no one's going to bother you in that time. That's your rule. That, okay, I'm working on my creative process for these hours between this time. I'm not going to accept any phone calls. I'm not going to accept any emails. I'm not going to talk to anybody who is going to at all be a disruption. I'm not going to go on the internet or social media or watch YouTube videos, whatever. I'm just going to write my writings, or draw my drawings or plan my film, whatever it is. You need to treat it so seriously that if you were your own boss, if you were like a duplicate of yourself next to each other, like a twin, looking over yourself, so you'd be kind of scolding yourself, maybe in a productive way, not like abusing yourself, but just saying, hey, do you really need to be checking up on some random stuff on ChatGPT about the darkest battles of the ancient Rome, in and leading up to the fall of Constantinople? No, you don't. Not at this point in time. Maybe another point in time. So you need to create these habits of treating your work as excellence, because then when the time comes where you'll be able to meet those people you need to meet, the prospects, the clientele, and the jobs will come your way, you'll be able to say and do what you need to be in that position to take on that creative work and be paid for it, because you've done it so many times and you treat it so professionally. So there's that idea that comes about that perfection or greatness is when preparation meets opportunity. Opportunity and preparation, that creates many things together. You need to remember that. I need to remember that. We all need to remember that. To be in our best state so that when the opportunities arise, we prepared the way that we are prepared for. The second point I'll say is caveat on that, because this is something I messed up when I made my first feature film, and being so super idealistic, which some of us artists, creative types are, that we need to ensure that we have all our necessary finances covered for. So rent, bills, food, any outgoings, all these subscriptions online or in real life, phone and internet, and all this kind of stuff. Even emergency funds, contingency funds. I'd say it's good to have, even ideally, a number of months. I'd say at least 3 months of these all backed up, because then if you're coming to an emergency, you don't have to freak out. So ideally having at least rent, bills, and all that 3 months. If things work out, you could have 6 or 9 or 12 months, and then you wouldn't really have to worry for a while. You could really focus on your creative pursuit and be very selective with the work that comes your way. What a blessing that would be. But I understand we don't all live in the same circumstances. Some of us live in places in the world or opportunities where it's very difficult to make enough money to cover all ends. Personally, I'm okay lowering a bunch of my living standards in order to put a lot of my creative effort and time and money into my creative pursuits. So I've been so much of my life living in share houses, eating nearly all the time except for on occasion home cooked meals, and really reducing unnecessary spending. Just being very money conscious so I could put as much of that into my creative work. But I understand everything's different for everybody. People got different expenses, different needs, and all that. And the last thing I'd like to say about trading your creative practice professionally is there's different ways of going about it. It's not like you have to work 10 hours a day on a creative practice. No, ideally, a few hours is amazing, because you're not going to be at your maximum for 10 hours a day creatively. If you are, you're not putting all your effort into it, because it is draining. A music artist can't perform for 10 hours a day. Even an athlete can't perform for so many hours. It's difficult to be so on at that level all the time. If you can put 4 hours in a day creatively at your peak, that is, I'd say, great. But I'd say the minimum you should be aiming for is an hour a day. Otherwise, you're not really serious at all. But probably the maximum going at peak is 5 hours. And beyond that, you can't really, I'd say, be 100% productive. Perhaps if you're doing something that's not using 100% of your mind, just say you're well, I hate to say directing, because I love directing so much, and it is using 100% of my mind, but everything's already planned out, and there's a support network and all this, and so that's why directing days are so long. But I'm just saying the whole creation process itself, just say like writing a screenplay, yes, you could edit maybe for 10, 11, 12 hours a day, but just that fresh writing process, there needs to be a lot of time of thinking and letting things resonate, letting things kind of vibrate or distill, this whole kind of process. So I don't think it's realistic to go at maximum for more than 5 hours a day. I think 5 hours is amazing work if anyone's getting to that kind of level. Working on other people's projects, yeah, cool. You can do that all day. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, or even working on a project with a support network, like a director or a bunch of musicians or some kind of team project, or where you're doing editing or analysis, or some kind of using both parts of your mind. However, lastly, if you're already being paid in a job, which obviously nearly all of us are, some kind of work, whatever it is, creative or not, you should always fulfill your commitments. It's not only your bills and rent and all that, which is a commitment, of course, but also your commitment to do any job that you've already taken on. And there may also be this sense of commitment if you're in some kind of freelance work or a business where you can take work and then an event comes up and whatnot, and you can do that event or do that work on that particular day that needs to be done at a certain time because the client's not going to wait. If you have a client with a timeline, you may need to fulfill their needs straight away. But besides that, if you've done the urgent work for a client, then you should schedule and block in your urgent work for your creative process. Because your work is important, your work is urgent, and it needs to be done. If you don't believe it, nobody will, so you need to believe it. I believe in my work. I'm doing the best I can. I'll take it all the way I can. You should too. You should believe in ourselves as artists because that's how great artists make great work. And we can at least believe our own art is great. And it will become great over time. It becomes greater and greater over time. My music itself, I've been interested in my entire life. I only really started recording in the last couple of years. Already, I'm listening to it all the time. Sometimes 30, 60, 90 minutes a day. And it's giving me immense joy. I've become one of my top 5 music artists. And it's insane to me. I couldn't imagine this just a few years ago. And it goes again with my filmmaking as well, which is my main craft. This latest film I made, I'm amazed at. I'm like, wow, I finally made a film, which is incredible. And I've got so many incredible actors. Had an incredible team. I'm so excited to see this through to the end. I couldn't have done this all the rest of those earlier years and decades of my life. Finally, I've made it to this point. And it doesn't really matter whatever the fuck anybody else thinks because I've become a kind of greatness that I couldn't have been for all of the lower years of my life. So we are excelling, we're reaching higher and better levels. We need to keep at it and take on all the best advice and ideas that we can to reach that next level. I'll leave you just with one more thing, which is I once stayed with a woman who was kind of a bit like a mother to me. I've been in a bunch of these different situations throughout my life, living in different countries and hearing different families as I've kind of lived with them. And the woman said, "You need to meet my nephew. He's amazing. Any piece of advice he ever gets, he just implements it like that. He just does it. He becomes a great new person." And I didn't meet him for like 2 weeks, but I was thinking that whole time in the back of my mind now and then. I thought, wow, that sounds like a really interesting, amazing person. Someone just implements a new great idea. Whenever he heard a great idea, he would just implement it. And that's the kind of person we all need to be. But the interesting thing is when I met this person, he didn't actually seem to be that way. It was just the way that the auntie had perceived him for some way, some reason, perhaps because she was not so much like that. So she perceived him to be like that. However, that's what the reality was, but the ideal nevertheless stuck in my mind that hey, I will myself become that person that she was talking about. When a great new idea comes, I will have the flexibility and the tenacity to jump into that idea. And that's really stuck with me over the years. And I try to implement it, that these new pieces of ideas and advice that can really help our flow and our craft and become better of who we are, who we need to be as artists. I try to implement, and hopefully you can too. So have a blessed day, week, month, year, life. See you around. Peace. Shalom. Goodbye.